everybody. Welcome to a new fourth episode of Women Are. It is a panel show featuring creative professionals talking about their career journeys in a funny and frank way. And this is our halfway mark in our 8-episode season. I hope that you guys have enjoyed these episodes as much as I have. I literally could talk to all these panelists for hours. When we come up to 3 o'clock, I'm like, you need to take some questions. But I'm like, I still have questions. So I think this episode will be no different from any of those, especially since all of these women are professional, like seasoned streamers. And so I think we could probably get to 8 hours, just gabbing, but we won't do that. We will be ending at 3:15. Anyway, our episode this week features dungeon masters. And actually, this was one of the inspirations for this whole series. See, our RPGs are so popular now, but I see way too few prominent women in positions to show other women how awesome it is. So, I really wanted to just elevate these voices and show everybody that it's fun to be in charge and kill your friends. Okay, so not in real life, but just virtually. Anyway, before I introduce our panelists, I will say that every week we give $750 away to charity. And this week we are giving to Extra Life, which is an amazing charity that gamers often raise money for. They give their money to Children's Miracle Network hospitals to help sick kids in hospitals. And so it's a wonderful charity. I've worked with them over the years, and I'm happy to support them. If you guys are planning on doing end of the year donations, might as well start right now. So anyway, join us in welcoming all our guests. I'm going to introduce you guys in succession and ask you to tell just a little bit about yourselves to introduce you to the audience. Starting with Amy Vorpal.
Hey, I'm Amy Vorpal, and it's awesome to be back here on Felicia Day's Twitch. Hello, everybody. I guess I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons since college, and since my freshman year, almost the exact first day I got to college, I was roped into a session for the first time and then never looked back. And then I guess I've been DMing for the last 5 years. And I will say the first time I ever dungeon mastered ever was on camera, and that almost gave me, if it hadn't gone as well as it did, the panic attack might have never let me dungeon master again. It's a new feat to dungeon master in front of a camera. I mean, much less in front of just your friends. So I was just kind of shoehorned in, and bada bing, bada boom. Also, never looked back after that.
Amazing. We're going to get into all of that background a little bit more, and your experience, many experience. Have you guys been watching? She did a whole summer of the Guild D&D, and we really enjoyed playing with her. Her wit is awesome, as are these other women who I hope each of you will be on this channel somehow doing a one-shot with the Guild going forward. Anyway, speaking of which, Abria Iyengar is our second, or just another one of our panelists. Abria, could you introduce yourself a little bit and tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Abria. I'm a dungeon master and TTRPG player all over Twitch, lots of different channels. I ran for a one shot for you guys. You turned my beautiful, sexy vampire into a poo monster. So I'm very, very proud of that. And it's awesome being here. Hi.
Yeah, that was one of the
apologize.
No, it wasn't our finest hour, or it might have been. You can look at it either way.
Glorious.
Sateen, please introduce yourself. I have been adoring you from afar for years. Our ships passed in the night kind of at Geek and Sundry, but seeing you represent and just be a face for the community there after I left was so wonderful. So please introduce the audience to you if you can.
Well, thank you for all that. Hi, everyone. I'm Sateen Phoenix. I'm a professional dungeon master, and also I'm a storytelling coach. I teach people how to write stories, and I've been playing for 32 years and dungeon mastering for 10 years. It is my life. Mm-hmm. That's my tattoo. That's my D&D tattoo.
Wait, let me see. Oh my God. That's incredible.
I love that I knew it was a tattoo, and still part of my brain was like, it's a birthmark. Yes.
It is a birthmark.
You were born with that. You were born branded.
Yeah. Even D&D was like, why would you do that?
I have a Starbucks one on my right boob because I love lattes so much. Anyway.
Guys, this is why the stock market's doing great. We are definitely in society.
And our last guest, this is gonna be a free for all. It's gonna be a lot more formal because all these ladies are amazing. The last but not least of our guests, who my friend Britt, who is the producer of the show, introduced me to your work, and she streams at That Bronze Girl, but her name is Jasmine. And could you introduce yourself, because I'm fascinated and in love with you as well, seeing your work from researching it for this panel. So please.
Yes. Hi. Hello. I'm Jasmine, that bronze girl Bular. And yes, I play D&D with Britt every Wednesday. I don't DM that campaign, but I do DM online. I'm a full-time content creator on Twitch. Yeah, I do a lot of tabletop RPG stuff, as well as comic book stuff too. I'm a big comic book nerd. And I guess technically now I'm in the game dev side of tabletop RPG as well, since I'm helping develop a project called Into the Motherland. So
oh, very cool. I want to hear all about that. That is incredible. Yeah, so we have so many things to ask. And please, audience, please send your questions. We will, if you ask enough good questions, I will get to your questions before 3. So we'll have more than enough time for more than 3 questions. I'm so sorry. I will, hopefully, if you guys ask good questions. If you don't, I'm just going to talk the whole time. Anyway, so I'd love to hear from each of you. Amy kind of touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to hear what your first experience with D&D was. Do you remember your character, and what was the thing about it that hooked you? Was it the people who got you into it, and what was the catalyst of your journey? Yeah.
Well, I honestly thought this was like a BDSM dungeon mastering thing, so I'm a little bit thrown off my game. I'm sorry, it was a bad joke.
There's actually a picture going around on Twitter about, if you guys have seen, if anybody's from Los Angeles, Erewhon, and I go there to buy like $10 strawberries just because I'm like, I'm feeling fancy. It's the most expensive grocery store you've ever been. It makes Whole Foods look like, a 7-Eleven. And go to Twitter. I don't want to link it at all, but there's a picture yesterday where it's like, currently at Erewhon, and it was a woman leading a man in on a leash.
And I thought that's what this was. Yeah, because
it still could be. Don't give up hope.
You can make it.
You have time.
There's a lot of correlation. That's all I'm saying.
I'll walk people through Games Workshop. Any Warhammer? I'm just kidding. No,
you can do Warhammer. It's a different kind of Warhammer. Okay.
Yes, the Warhammer is my. I'm so sorry, Britt. Yeah. So I got.
Oh no, this is perfect. This is exactly what we wanted.
I got into D&D during 3.5, and my first character was born out of a lot of weaponized edge. So I played a cancer mage from the Book of Vile Darkness. Mm-hmm. And her backstory was she was like Catwoman. She was dead and resuscitated by plague rats. So she was a lot.
You came out of the gate hard. I love it.
Yeah, because I came into this like, I am darkness incarnate. And now I'm like, I'm a hedgehog named Brienne Thimblebucket, and I just want to raise roaches on my farm in Masquerade. So things have changed a bit, but...
Who are the people who got, like, what was like the person who, and they were, was it like a really good friend? Like who got you into that game?
It was my then boyfriend, and the game ended up being terrible. So for a few years, I thought D&D was really lame because sometimes like your first group can do that. Mm-hmm. It was also like my first table flip because like I'm as an evil character, I did something evil, and they were all goody two shoes, and it turned into a PvP situation
with your own party.
Yeah.
Wow.
And as a big fan of like StarCraft and strategy games and stuff, I was like, this game isn't balanced. This is dumb. Why would anybody play this? And I will actually say that D&D isn't really balanced for PvP.
Oh, it's good for PvP. Okay. That's a different way to play. I would love to see that, actually.
Yeah. So I got angry and didn't play for a few years. And then I picked it up again, I think, with Masquerade and other systems, and then eventually made my way back to D&D with 5th edition. I was like, no, it's completely dependent on the group you play with. Like your entire experience will be informed by who you play with.
Isn't that everything though? Like a party can be the worst thing in the history of everything, or it can be like the best experience ever. It just depends on who you're partying with, right? Not that I go to parties ever. Sateen, what hooked you in D&D? Who got you in? I assume Jasmine, just 1 second. Did that D&D game break you guys up, or
it was a part of it? Yeah, 100%.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of thought he was a tool after that.
Because he was the goody two shoes who didn't want you to be evil.
Yeah. And then he also played Alliance and World of Warcraft, and I played Horde. And there was like
Okay.
a lot of
That's
there was
been
a lot of
Warcraft.
stuff there that I was like,
I'm an Alliance player, but that's okay.
you
That's fine.
know,
Yeah.
he was like, oh, Protoss is better than Zerg. There was like, I was like, wait, I could do better.
Those, yeah. I mean, I don't know if I could.
half
I could.
orc queen who deserves a chaotic king, you know? And
Listen,
so-
that's your style. You know your style. I would never date a Slith. You know, Slytherin. They couldn't do it. Couldn't do it.
I like that you called them Slith. That's
Yeah, one of my best friends is a Slith, and I'm like, it doesn't sound good, but I'm like, hey, don't be a Slith. Like, he's my business partner. I'm like, don't be a Slith about this, okay? Let's just give them what they want. Anyway, Sateen, what was your first experience with D&D, and did you alienate or break up with anybody over it? Because I actually want this to be a common thread.
No, actually, there I was, 8 years old, 1988, digging through a basement box, and then da-da-ding, there was a box set. And I played by myself for many years until my drama club friends were playing. And then I said, you have to play with me. I have to play with you. And they're like, yeah, okay. All right, cool.
So was that like high school?
So, yeah, I would like, you know how some girls play dolls? Yeah, I would play Dungeons and Dragons with myself. And then in high school, I started playing with people and other humans. But my original character, you can play on Untitled Champions.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So what is your original character?
Her name is Vlanya Umvara, and she's a bard wizard. But before, she was a thief mage, because that's what you would play in 1988.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's
and then she
that's
would die, and I'd make another one, and her name was Lanya, and then she would die, and then make another one called Vlahahanya. And I just kept doing that.
And how did you play alone? Because I've actually, when I first started doing Twitch a lot more earlier this summer, I downloaded single player RPGs, which actually are doable. Well, we can talk about that later, but has anybody played those things, and are they fun? Like, what did you kind of play it like that?
You mean like the box sets? The box sets are
You can
okay.
download actual campaigns where you're like playing by yourself and you roll and everything. You just read. It's really cool, actually.
I love playing by myself. I play by myself a lot now and then. And really, it's like I'm the dungeon master, and then I come up with stories and I write them down and I make characters and I make NPCs, and I'm just a one-man show in my head. It's really not as weird as it sounds. Really,
No. It sounds cool. I'd love to watch it one day. Abria, how did you get into all of this? What was your first hook? What drew you in?
My at the time boyfriend, now husband, so it wasn't a breakup. It actually progressed because of Dean. I know, I'm sorry.
Yet.
No, that's okay. It's like, listen, we all find
Yet.
Yeah. Yet. The clock's still ticking. We don't know how this is gonna end. No one knows anything. But they looped me in. They were like, they're a board game group, and they were like, oh, let's try 5th edition now that it's out. None of us have played D&D before. Oh, and you can bring your girlfriend. We'll just make her a cleric. So I was immediately brought in as like the healer on the sideline. They're like,
That's
you're
so
a big
girl.
dog.
That's such
It
a girl
was
thing to do, right?
so bad. And then 2 sessions in, I was like, I like this more than you. Switched to a warlock, became daddy's favorite, and started DMing 6 months after that, where I was like, none of you, all you want to do is Lord of the Rings things, and I don't care about that. So we're going to tell different stories, and basically ran off screaming into Adventurers League. And then I used to tutor a bunch. So my test subjects for DMing were just gaggles of 14-year-old boys that were just give me a bloody description of this goblin as I kill it. And I'm like, I can do that. Let's go.
So they wanted the most hardcore, and that was probably more your style anyway, right?
Yeah, it's super fun. It's just awkward when a teenage boy who's like, what is this puberty thing? I'm gonna hit on all of these NPCs. And I'm like, I'm an adult. Please don't. This is awful.
Very awkward. Very awkward. And so the character that really caught your attention was imagination was not the cleric. It was the warlock.
It was immediately the warlock, because that intersection of having a relationship with your source of power, whether it's antagonistic or something else. And once again, a daddy's favorite kind of girl. So I'm like, yeah, I bang my patron. That's how this works. Let's all just get on board with that. And I'm flirting with everything I see. This is the game now. I just like that, having that plot hook for the DM to say oh, this can be a point, a vector for us to have a conversation and talk about power dynamics and how people relate to the origin and sources of their abilities. Seems really cool.
Oh, wow. I want to hear a treason on that. You blow my mind. You've, in the brief time that we've known each other, you've literally inspired me to look up a bunch of things. What did you say about what was the thing about asymmetrical relationships? What was that terminology you used
Oh
about?
God, I don't know anything I say. It all runs out of my brain as I say it.
But anyway, you're brilliant. Okay, Amy, so you said that you started in college. So who was it that got you in? Did you break up with somebody? What was your character?
I didn't break up with anyone. There's no relationship that was born from playing D&D beyond my best friend at the time, or who became my best friend. But anyway, I went to school with my to the same college that my cousin went to, and one of her good friends came in, saw my dorm room. This is like day one when I moved in. Saw my dorm room, saw that there was a bunch of Star Wars everywhere, but also a lot of Lord of the Rings posters, and I think I had 9 Lord of the Rings movie posters, and then also a bunch of Star Wars stuff. And then it got to the point, oh, you're an acting major. And so this friend named Nathan, whose last name is Strange, his name is Nathan Strange, and he just goes, if you are an acting major and you like all of this kind of shit, boy, do I have something for you. And then it was really that night, he was like, we need come play D&D with us. I did. My first character, it was 3.5 as well, Jasmine, and I played just a rogue, a halfling rogue, named her Nefarial Benedin, because Nefarial is like nefarious and Benedin is like good. I thought I was so clever, and I immediately put on basically like an Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors accent, and did like I played like this, and she was just, and I immediately just played that, and no one else was doing voices, but they were like, yeah, you seem in, man. and I just was, and we played that campaign. I think I got to level 18 with them over the course of the next like three and a half years. Yeah.
That's a long-term relationship. That's really impressive.
We all became summer RAs, and it was so classic because there was an athlete and then us, and the athlete kept making fun of us all summer until he realized, oh, there's no one to hang out with him. We're all hanging out with each other. And then he started trying to get in our game. And we were like, no, man, you spent the entire summer making fun of us.
That's kind of funny. You're rejecting, this guy probably never been rejected in his life. And you're like, no, you're not cool enough for our D&D game.
He was not cool enough for our D&D game.
That's amazing. Yeah. So what's interesting is that a lot of you either found it more as an adult versus Sateen. Whose book was that when you found it in that basement? Like it was one of your parents, or was it just a random box?
Yeah, it was a gaming box that my parents had put away like years before for like 8 years. So it was one of like the 1980 boxes.
Wow. So that was like real.
I had to blow dust off of it. Like it was a thing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, I feel like, the earlier that you get into this kind of stuff, the easier it is to define yourself in it. But like, especially as women, it's more you get into the world. Like, I think hopefully this next generation of women is going to be like, oh, I'm 14 and I'm totally into this, right? But for us, it's more of a late adoption kind of thing. And it takes us a little bit more longer to kind of catch up in a sense, right? And that's why maybe the same thing with women getting into the DM side is a little bit more delayed, right?
Yeah, but we're all women. We have stories to tell, and it's not much different. Like I grew up next to a library, so I would read fantasy books. Since I was itty bitty, this wasn't any different, really. Mm-hmm. And so now we've got all of us badass women who have stories to tell, and this is how we do it without having anyone get in our way.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So what was the journey for you guys going from player to DM? Because I will tell you right now, I've never DM'd. I'm terrified. I've been asked repeatedly to do it. And there's something about the journey, the idea of going from in a seat and I'm just playing and somebody else has me taken care of to you're in charge, right? And everyone's going to try to screw with you and you might not be up to it. That just might be me because I'm a terrified individual just in life. But what led you to overcome that, and how did you feel afterwards?
I'll say that. So your perception is how I started DMing, and that's why it caused the panic attack, which is like, holy shit, I'm in charge. yikes, that's a lot. And then it took me probably a long time, years, to realize, no, I'm not. No, I'm not in charge. Like, I'm making judgment calls here and there, but for the most part, like, even playing with the guild, Felicia, like, I think I've told you guys so many times at the end of the game, y'all are like, so did we do it? And I'm like, you sure did something, but there's no way I could have planned any of this. Like, I play out hypotheticals in my brain. I have to. And then you're like, this is how we solve this problem. And it's like, okay, why did I try so hard? It worked really hard. But I guess to answer your question, coming to it, it was just born out of necessity. It was a show on Nerdist and Geek and Sundry, and we were going to do seniors play RPGs, which is a little series on
That sounds adorable.
Yeah, and it was called D&D for the AARPG. And
great.
And they just they needed a dungeon master, and they were like, Amy, and I was like, I can't, it's not like I can't do it. I bet I could. And then they were like, great, because we're not asking anyone else. And I was like, okay, I have
amazing.
Yeah.
And did you feel like maybe it was a little, because, like when I go to a ballet class and I know that there's going to be like pro ballerinas there, I don't want to go. But if it's like a bunch of older women or like kids, I'm like, okay, I'll go and be my, like peak tight self. Like, is it the fact that it was AARP people who would not be like experts? Was that a little bit easier for you to be like, I could do this, because they wouldn't be as judgmental about your skills? They're not going to put you to the test every single second because of your gender or your knowledge base.
Totally. I don't really have anything to add to that. That's exactly what happened, which is they didn't know what they couldn't do. And I also didn't know what I at this point, I feel good about the rules, but I didn't, it's just, like I said, it's making judgment calls here and there. But yeah, they would ask questions, they would do whatever the hell they wanted. And I would even, like, there was one old woman, a senior, I guess I should say, but she started describing the room to me. And I was like, hold up there, Annie. Like, there doesn't happen to be like a pile of gold in there. You can't just have a that's not how this works. So it was just
amazing though.
Yeah, it makes good television for sure.
That's cute. Jasmine, how did you get into it? So basically I really want to know the journey here, because like you was like F off, also breaking up with you, Goody Two Shoes Alliance douchebag. What?
Yeah, basically.
How did you get back into it? And was it a short journey or a long journey for you to like I don't know you very well, but I feel like it wouldn't have been that hard for you to go and be like, I'm going to tell you guys what to do.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. Basically from there, I worked at a game shop for several years, and there were groups that would play in the store, and I would overhear what they were doing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the male DMs would do some weirdish, if I'm being honest. And I'd be like, what the heck is this? There was like an Edge of the Empire game, and he's like, this player's passed out. And I remember as an employee at the store, I was like, if you do anything at this juncture, I will throw hands. Yeah, I remember having that moment, like not even being in the game. So from there, me and some of the other staff started playing again. Mm-hmm. And the DMs would never last. They would just, they would quit after, because it's a lot of work. So they would quit after a few
It's so much work. Listen,
everybody
I cannot underestimate it. Yeah.
And so, my first time like officially DMing, I had to like a couple of one shots and stuff like that was actually on camera, similar to Amy. There was like a project they were putting together to promote like this Kickstarter, and everyone's like, well, who's going to DM it? Who's going to DM it? Who's going to DM it? I was like, I'll do it. Whatever. Fine. I'll do it. I'm a team player. I'll do this horrific task you've laid upon me. And then I did. I was like, this isn't bad. Y'all are complaining about nothing. This is like, there is prep work involved. There is like, I'm not going to try to say it's not like a load that, there's some labor involved, but I mean, it's the rule of cool. So if you flub a rule or you mess something up, I mean, you just rule in the interest of fun. I've had audience members be like, that's not how it's done, but I've never had a player do that. My players are usually like, oh, sick. Love it. It's the audience might sit there and be like, that's not how you resolve their role. But that even then it's just a loud minority. Majority of people are like, I know you pulled that out of your butt, but love it. Love the energy. Love where you're going with that. This should be chaotic and fun. So yeah, it was a long walk to get back to tabletop RPGs, but a short walk to get from there to DMing. Cause I feel like DMs are like a rotating door.
It really is. It's kind of thankless in a sense because I think a lot of people don't appreciate how much work it goes into it. Like,
Mhm.
you know, it's kind of like writing, right? Like nobody really appreciates how much work it goes to, and all the planning and all the self-doubt, and you know, and also you're basically having a bunch of people come in and like let's fuck up your shit, like let's really mess this up, you know. So Abria, when we played. I mean, there were so many instances you're like, you know what? I like it. You could do that. It's not legal, but I'm going to let you do it. And I love that attitude because it really took some of the like, oh my gosh, somebody in chat is going to point out that I don't know this rule kind of situation. And it took the burden off that because you were just ruling the table in a sense. And can you talk about your approach to that and how that kind of came to be?
Oh, yeah. I feel like when I first started, because I started DMing with Adventurers League stuff, and that's you're handed like a module, you get like 10 minutes to read it as everyone's sitting down, and then you sort of run like you just sort of run by like going down the line and resolving stuff as it's handed to you, which was like thank God I'm so like blown away by anyone who had to like figure this out on camera in real time. I feel like being able to come to it with really low stakes of like, yeah, it's a room full of people who are just at a game shop on a Saturday and I'm not being paid and no one can see me. Like if I mess up, I don't care. I won't have to come back to this place. I will go to the one.
I'm out of here.
That's fine. I will burn this bridge. I don't care. And it's the same thing running for kids who are also just like, oh, I didn't even read the spell right. Like they just skipped a whole sentence and I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine too. So I think it's a mixture of that, like sort of, I want to like working with kids and wanting to curate fun for them and knowing that like when they are excited, like all of the like detail acuity goes away and they're just like, I just made a choice. And you're like, I want to reward that because you are literally standing on a chair screaming at me like downward as you're excited. Like I love that. And there's no way to not want to reward that. And I think that's just sort of carried over. And like, I've had like improv, like did improv back in the day. So like the sort of yes and of just like, honestly, that's cooler than what I planned. So we're going to do that now. This is all fine. I have a list of like NPCs and just random names of stuff, like run in whatever direction you want because nothing I plan it's not going to be cooler than whatever the table cares about. So I think it's kind of babysitting as a DM of just like chasing down your table's fun and just throwing stuff out in front of them. Like, keep doing that. It's great. You look great, sweetie. And just like yeeting the world around.
Yeeting it. You yeeting it? Oh,
yeah.
I just learned that word. Sateen, you know, can you tell me when you first stepped into DM, was it when you were a kid? And are there certain players, and this is going to sig into the other, are there certain players you kind of dread sitting down at a table with? And is that a situation where you feel like, oh no, I can tell this person is going to be a handful and they're going to want to undermine me? And is that something that all of you experienced? And how do you deal with that in a cogent way that doesn't, without just murdering them outright?
That is a whole lot of question, and also
I know it's a lot.
And
so
the
take the
answer is yes.
take the floor. Take the floor. Yes.
Meltdown Comics. Remember Meltdown, that place? Yeah. So 10 years ago.
My boyfriend right now, I was like, he's like, who's on the panel? I was like listing everybody's name, and he was like, Sateen Phoenix. I remember I went to Meltdown and she was hosting the Meltdown Comics thing. And I was like, did you ever play with her? It's like so crazy. There's this intersection where you guys have met.
I'm convinced LA is like one block.
It really is. Before quarantine, where I would go everywhere I go, I'd meet somebody I knew. Like it really is a small city in that if you're in certain subgroups, like you kind of all go the same places. So anyway,
yeah. And Meltdown was that place. That is the place.
Yes, it was.
Go, you know,
it was an amazing place.
I ran a life drawing class out of there, but also they asked me to run their Dungeons and Dragons group because I had done a web series back then about Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, okay. And I get there and I put up the meetup.com, everything. And there's like 30 people show up and nobody wanted to be the dungeon master. Womp womp. It's an age old story. So here I am like dungeon mastering tables of 14. I never dungeon mastered before, but I wanted everybody to play so bad. I was like, we're doing it. We're just going to do it. And yeah, there was always, I feel like quarterly, right? Everything moves in quarters. People can commit to quarters in gaming. So every quarter there was a person that would try to like take out their trauma on the group. And now I have skills. It took me like 4 years of building the skill to wrangle that person to understand that they're not just being an asshole. Like they're just, you know, they just need a little more care. But yep, And also you used to be able to drink in game there. And then this thing happened where now they're not, or at least after a little while they weren't, because they started getting a little sassy, like sexy. And I don't like that. I didn't like that at all.
No.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with, and this could be open up to the whole thing. How do you deal with a player who is kind of, because I feel like as women, you know, a lot of us are talking about the joy of DMing, and Amy's talking about older people who don't have a lot of experience, and Abria is like loving kids. And so there is a situation where you're not expecting to be judged and sort of like conditionally approved of in your role of authority over you. And we all know that there are a lot of gender dynamics that is going to invite, especially a guy, to be a little doubtful of your abilities going in. Like you're not going to be given the same credence at sitting down at the head of a table blind as you would a guy sitting down at the same table. And how do you kind of deal with that dynamic? Do you have to overcompensate with the way that you act? How do you feel like that plays out in a way that you can still foster a joyful experience?
Well, I mean, the biggest problem is rule lawyers, right? Mm-hmm. But if you over storytell and you show that other people are having a lot of fun breaking the rules, like when somebody says, hey, but what about this rule? I'm like, I could enact that, but then this wouldn't happen. And they're like, oh, okay. And you kind of have to train them to let it go and be more playful. And I try to do it without shaming, because we're already a group of people who are afraid of confrontation and have a lot of inner shame. So by being playful and kind of cooing them and nurturing them, I find that helps for me.
Yeah.
I want to jump in and just say, I think I have the least helpful answer, just because I came from the like jock background. And for those who don't know me on the internet, I'm 6'1", like I'm a big girl. So there's a lot of like, especially like early on when I was playing with unfamiliar tables and stepping up to run, there was a lot of like, I would have to have like a physical presence to like really shoot down like dudes that would get in my face about it. And it's that weird intersection of like, you're a woman and you're a person of color. Like, do you even go here? Do you actually care about any of this? Yeah. And a lot of that can be elided by, you know, putting your own D&D dick on the table and just say like, hi, I know this system.
Your D and dick.
Yeah. You like, sometimes you kind of have to do it where you're just like, I know the system backwards and forwards. Like if you want to talk about like, and just overemphasize it, you're like, I know this backwards and forwards. I'm standing here, not you, because I'm the one that volunteered to be here. If you want to take over, by all means, go ahead. Like I will rip you 3 ways from Sunday. And if you want to have a good time, that's great. If not, we can step outside. I'm not scared of you. And
yeah, you really have to feel like you are a leader. You have to channel that. I am the leader here, and you're in good hands. And I'm not going to slap you, but you are definitely going to stay in that seat.
Yeah. And I think I'm very grateful for like an entire background of sports, of dealing with like people in like high emotions. Cause like that comes out so much. Like it is crazy how much D&D is a team sport, and like those same sort of personality traits and like that like testosterone burst of like feeling very personally affected by the story and like having all of those adrenaline highs. And you have to run that the same way like a team captain runs in the middle of like a basketball game. And I'm very, very grateful for a super like in the closet nerd upbringing that taught me how to deal with high emotion people who like need that sort of like, I'm going to check you, and it's not in a way that I want to dissuade you from being here or to treat me as adversarial, but for right now, I need you to understand that like you are in good hands, and sometimes it takes a pat on the back, and sometimes it needs to be a little lower and a little harder to like get people to like fall in line, and just got to be willing to do it.
Yeah. I mean, Jasmine, I imagine working at a game store, you already had that kind of thing. And I see, listen, and I've been in the nerd space since, you know, a long time. It's been a while. And I've seen such a monumental change in not only the landscape and the face, but also the attitudes. But, you know, there's always that contingent, and working at a game store, so you had that. So what are your tips about dealing with that as a leader, especially if you're a new DM? That's when you're the squishiest, right? But you still have to, you know, really be a leader. How do you balance that?
It was a journey for me. I think initially I was probably, I was so terrified of that label of being mean. you know, because it gets especially put on women of color a lot. Like you're immediately branded bitchy or mean, or, you know, I'm scared of bronze. Like I hear that shit all the time. And it's like, I've never physically hurt anybody or anything like that. And you still hear it. And so then I overcompensated and I was like, well, there's no winning. So I'm just gonna be rude or be like, no, that's dumb. That sit down, you know, like, and then it was, I overcorrected a little bit because I felt like no matter how nice I am, I can't win. And I feel like now I'm at this point where it's just like, I'm not going to compromise on who I am or what my values are to appease other people. That's just not who I am. And I think that
Amazing.
people who sit at a table with me know from my demeanor and know from who I am as a person that if I see something I don't like, or if something is happening that I'm not okay with, that I'm going to speak on that. And the way I learned that was by advocating for other players at the table. Because if you let things slide, sometimes one person's fun can stomp on everyone else's fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes you have to be the bad guy. And if you're not willing to wear that mantle and enforce not just like safety rules, but like just like role play and agency rules, because like you have spells in D&D that involve reading people's minds, forcing them to do things. If you're not willing to step in there and advocate for your players to make sure everybody is having fun and everything is like just going as dope as possible, that is a part of being the DM. And some immature people will think you're the bad guy. And my response to that is let them think that. Who cares?
Can I jump in really quick?
I'll be the evil queen.
Yeah. Jump in. Everyone jump in.
Jasmine,
Go for it.
I got to tell you, like, I have admired this about you. Like, I don't feel that I can say a lot of things online. And I love the way you have this courage that I don't have. You know, and so like sometimes you'll post something and I try to repost it because I'm like, yeah. And then I still like, I don't need to do this, but I still hide. But when you have a voice, it helps me and hopefully other women and people of color like get that feeling too. So maybe eventually I'll be like, yeah, but keep doing you.
I have so much respect and admiration for you, Sateen. I'm so glad we got to actually sit at a table together recently because I adore you as well.
Meow.
That's amazing. Yeah, it is really an attitude of. I mean, I hear you, Sateen. Like, early in my career, and I was one of the first people, you know, to be prominent on the internet. Like, I was in the first wave of internet, and so
You
I was
set
kind
the
of
standard for a lot of us. So
yeah, but it was very much a standard of fear in that I knew that I needed to please everybody. Like, I felt like I needed to please everybody, and it's only been since I had a baby where I have realized you have to take care of yourself as much as you would a child that you have in your life. And not to say your players are children, but they're people you are caring for and nurturing, and your community is a place of caring and nurturing. And if you allow someone, if you are so afraid of alienating somebody that frankly you probably wouldn't want to be around anyway, then you're just sacrificing the safety of the people you actually do want to be around by making it marginally less safe and you being marginally less honest as yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And so that's what I love about Twitch in particular, is that the reason why I love it is because they gave you the tools very early on to monitor and you know, establish rules. And you guys are essentially saying the same thing about your DM, you know, your table as a DM. You are the leader, you are setting the standards, and you shouldn't let things pass by that are unacceptable, because you are essentially creating a world at the table, just as we all are creating a world online with our persona and online with our communities.
Yeah, you have to advocate for yourself and for your players.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much experience with people being, I guess, bad actors, because I came in to DMing like 5 years ago, and I really can't express how seamless my transition was. Everyone was like, cool, it's you. You know, at that point, no one was like, you're a female, get fucked. They were just like, oh, it's Amy. We like Amy. But I will say that to your point, like I have a song called The DM's Lament that the chorus goes like, I'm resigned to the fate that I'm my friend's referee and their chaperone and mother. I didn't ask for this, but who else will take care of these adult babies? And it's everyone's an adult baby. And one of the tools that you have as a dungeon master is your, like, for all, lack of a better analogy, you're the spotlight for the stage. So if there is a bad actor or someone who's, just being a little bit contrarian. It's like, oh, hold on, we'll get to your turn in a hot second. It's this person's time to play right now.
Mm-hmm.
And you just move the spotlight. That's it. You just move the spotlight. And it's always, you can always find a story motivation for moving that spotlight too.
Mm-hmm.
So that they can feel like maybe they get the sense that you were a little bit chastising them, but really for the most part, it's like, take a beat, we'll get to you, you know,
Yeah.
and then they'll take a beat. And normally it's like, it's almost like self-policing.
Yeah, and I think it's what women do a lot anyway. Like, just to be honest, I know that, you know, the logistics of DMing, there's a lot of, you're intimidated by the world building and the rules that you need, and you know kind of what all the classes do. And if you don't know what this spell does, then F you. But at the same time, the real joy of the process of role playing is in the storytelling and the DM leading you through a journey. And I guess I'm going to we have some great questions, you guys. Bravo. So I'm going to get the questions. I did want to ask two things before we finish. And one of them is, do you guys know, we're talking about D&D a lot here because that's just the mainstream. Are there other methods or systems that you've dived in that you A, love, or B, think is particularly good for people to dive in to take the head of something that might not be D&D, but might be an easier opening to lead a group of players through a story? Do you guys, you know, any of you? Sateen is nodding so hard. I'm going to get to you. Go to you.
10 Candles.
Yes.
Oh,
10 Candles taught me, because I'm obviously D&D, but like it taught me that I can give the players control of the world and that we can start building things together. It's a very cool game that the only light is from the candles, and everyone dies at the end. So what do you do? No matter what, you're going to die, but you forget, and you still are, because you're so part of the story. You're like, well, maybe I'm going to survive. So that game, hands down, changed the way I game.
Amazing. I want to play that. Bria, is there any other systems that you play that you would recommend, or you just really enjoy in addition to D&D?
I'm a huge fan of Powered by the Apocalypse systems. I think it's a really easy way to like hand wave a lot of new players' anxieties around like learning the like handbook of rules to feel like effective with your character sheet. You're down to like a piece of paper, and all of the like the RNG stuff is 2 6-sided dice with like super low modifiers, and
Oh, wow.
it builds these really nice story games that you're like, oh, we'll roll every now and then when we disagree on how something's working, or like does my favorite description from someone that like games at my table normally is that like I DM as a like, we talk about the story, and then at some point they say they do something and I respond with, do you? And that's when a dice roll is triggered. So I think Powered by the Apocalypse is very good about that, where it really is, it feels like just sort of collaborative storytelling. And then every now and then when a result of something or a choice would be contested by the universe, you like put dice involved, but it hands off a lot of the narrative. Like if you roll really well, like you as the player get to decide how that looks. Like you didn't just like cast a spell, you did a series of actions. So you tell me what that looks like, because I bet you have it in your head better than I do as a DM. So why don't you just tell me?
That's
And
amazing.
really
that sounds great. I've signed me up for all these. I have Good Society. Do you know that one about Jane Austen?
The Jane Austen. Yeah.
Guys, if you ever want to play with me, I would kill to play that. I have it on my coffee table, and I've been just dying to play it because I just love the fact that there are a lot of undiscovered systems, and D&D is great. Yeah. But it leans toward the technical heavy, and storytelling is something I love. You know, I tell stories with my baby every morning. We make up my dream, and she goes, and then you did this. And I'm like, yes, you did that. And it's like, I'm trying to give her the tools to tell stories in an uninhibited way. And sometimes we'll even use a die, and I'll be like, can you tell is it over 10 or under 10, Calliope? And she's like, it's under 10. I'm like, so you get a problem, and you get to solve a problem. And so we have a problem. And if it's over 10, she gets a reward, you know? So it's like, there are ways for me, like to just do that. But as an adult, we need to feel as joyful and uninhibited. And sometimes the D&D rule set kind of stomps on that. Jasmine, coming from a game store, you must be exposed to a lot of systems. Are there any you feel are undiscovered, or
so many that I love? I know I already mentioned Mouse Guard. That's my cozy game when you just want to be a chubby mouse and do adorable things. I love that one. I love Blades in the Dark. That's one of my favorites. Fast moving, it's cinematic. And I recently picked up the Green Knight box set by A24 because I can't wait for that movie. It's like, it's beautiful. I gotta do a hum. I'm not hashtag not an ad.
Not sponsored by.
Dev Patel is Sir Gawain.
It looks beautiful.
I'm gonna be buying all of the merch. But I think my like one of my favorite systems is probably gonna be disappointing is Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh my God, yes.
I'm an edgelord, so I love like the whole like, you know, the Lost Boys motif that the Bruja have. I love how many different genres of vampires it hits on. Like I love
it's so inventive. Yeah, it's so inventive.
Yeah.
When I saw Diki Thunder was there, I for a hot second I was like, oh, I shouldn't have left. I was like, no, but you're good. It would be it was something I was like, oh, that would have been something I'd love to play, because that world, you're right, is so rich, and the video game I was totally hooked as a teenager. Amy, have you played a lot of other systems or anything?
Tons.
You did that. What did you do with us that was so fun?
Yeah, I was gonna say it's roll for shoes, and that's a good way in because there are 7 rules, but really just 1 rule. So you can look up those rules online, but it's basically if you do something, everyone can do anything for 1 die, and then if you do something and succeed at it, then you can do that for 2 dice. And then you just kind of elevate that throughout the game. So you wind up getting really good at like putting on your pants, but it's like you have to roll for everything. Like if you want to walk across the room, and then you get really good at walking across rooms, and you elevate that into walking across rooms.
Didn't I level up my ability to poop on command or something like that?
Of course you did. It was poop on command. We had everyone was
Yeeting.
Growing limbs. It was preposterous. And the other system I'll say is Fiasco, which is if you watched a movie, you can play Fiasco, and that is definitely like you would be the dungeon master, but it's really cooperative, and you choose scenes, and it's very improv based. And it's meant to the story is meant to deteriorate like a Coen Brothers movie where everything's like, what the hell is happening? But when you're finished, you have basically like a really messed up, don't ever make it movie. And that's really fun.
Yeah, I do want to put it out there. Also, there's an elf romance RPG that I have on my shelf, and I've always wanted to play, and I cannot remember the name of. It was from like Chris Parmas's company, Green Ronin.
Starcrossed?
No, Green Ronin. It's guys. Now I'm looking it up. Okay,
oh my gosh.
I'm gonna look it up and find it, and then when I'm just gonna anyway. So whatever you're into, there was even one that was like a pink princess dragons that I picked up at PAX East. And I picked that up for babies, but I was like, this is actually would be fun for adults to play. So like role playing doesn't necessarily have to be tons of dice. It doesn't have to be elves and all that stuff. Whatever genre you like, there is a system out there for you. And I'm sure there's a video online that will help you learn it. Fiasco, we had a couple of tabletop ones that are very highly produced, but do teach you as you go along. And it made me want to play really badly. Okay, guys, I am going to get to questions because you guys ask a lot of them.
Really quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, because you mentioned GNS and everyone's like starting 5 years ago. I discovered RPGs 5 years ago. I wouldn't play and I wouldn't be an RPG player if GNS didn't exist, and I wouldn't DM if I wasn't able to watch like Sateen and Amy run games. And like, I don't know why I'm getting emotional at like 3 o'clock on a Monday, but like, if it weren't for having you guys there for me to feel more confident in doing that. And then watching you, Jasmine, like everything you've done in like game devs and running different kinds of games has inspired me to go like, okay, I can move past like high fantasy and try to tell different types of stories. So like, just for what it's worth, it is very cool being here with you all, because I wouldn't be here if it weren't for you all. So thank you for that. And I just want to say it before we got to viewer questions.
Oh, Bria, you're amazing. Like and I think just that message means that the more we put ourselves out there, the more, oh my God, you're making me cry. Stop it.
No, I just talked about being a bully earlier, so I can't.
No, not at all.
Like
I think a lot of our journey as women in this space, especially over the last 10 years for me, is just wanting to be seen as who I am and you know, there's always this sense that you sort of become something and then you start to conform to what people want of you, because as women we're taught, how can you be useful to other people? How can you be, you know, how can you make that person, you know, win you in a sense? And so we're always fighting against our natural instincts that we're taught. It's not natural. It's just what we're taught who we are. And especially if you're in a field who, you know, 5 years ago, even there was a lack of representation with women, especially in DMs, women of color, diverse women. Like this is why I want to do a series like this to show you, because you, Abria, being on here, you might inspire a girl or somebody's kid they show this thing to, they're like, oh, she's badass, I love her, everything about her, I want to be a DM just like her. So we really pay it back with our representing, and we have to show up and overcome our fear to do that, but it's worth it in the end. So
I got a video from a mom. She brings her daughter, like 6 years old, to all the conventions. And the video is a girl playing with her dolls. And she's writing encounters and really frustrated. She's like, oh, thinking. And then she puts the dice in the doll's hands and then rolls them.
what?
Yes, because she watches all of our shows. Like,
Oh
it
my
is
God.
important. What we do is so important.
Yeah, it is. And
It's
and just
either
support
that
it.
or she's going to become a gambler. So
It's true.
Why not both? Don't
Why not
limit
both?
yourself.
Okay, we're gonna get some questions because they're very good. Let's see. Herrig55 asks, what is your favorite NPC that you've ever created? Do you guys have something that stands out that kind of defines you and your sensibility that you created?
off the top of my head, Rubu from the guild campaign.
Rubu was a sentient mushroom who had sort of a murder, death, kill at the end, but was really cute, right?
Yeah, I'm Rubu. I'm the middle child. Give me attention. That was her.
It was kind of like Toad on steroids toward the end, right? Yeah. Anybody else?
I think I know what my fan favorite is, which I mean, she's pretty fun to play. It's I guess like a 12-year-old goblin child who now has warlock powers because a player very responsibly gave them to her. And her name's Daisy, and she's a goblin, and she's a handful. She likes climbing trees, and her sense of justice is very skewed. Yeah, don't give a 12-year-old an Eldritch shotgun.
Or do. I'm writing that down now. I think my favorite was my big bad from Pirates of Salt Bay, being able to play a villain that could like communicate in everyone's ear all the time. It wasn't like a villain that had to go like find and like hunt down. They were sort of like it was a god, so they were kind of always in their ear. It felt like a really fun mixture of like, ooh, I get to be bad, but also like I'm the DM, like telling them like, no, you should definitely do this bad thing, like derail the whole campaign. Let's go. And it was just fun, like sitting there going like, do it, coward, like just come on. So it was very fun, less as like a character outside of myself and more as like the closest I've felt like a self-insert. Like I'm here to like also trying to derail the game that we're all building. So like this is how it feels.
Amazing. Sateen, anything spring to mind?
It's really weird because this is just, I think he's a human. His name is Ruby's Mark, and I do a halfling voice, and I can't do it right now. I'm Ruby's Mark, and he has a pocket that has everlasting apples, and he drives the carriage for sirens, and that's it. And he's like, you want an apple? And he just throws apples to people, and it's just very helpful. It's my favorite.
Has any NPC, I know that Amy, when we were playing, we would like be like, oh, Ruth has to come to an adventure with us. Have you ever had like players just be like, that player's with us, like adopt them?
Yeah. Yeah. It's awkward when it becomes multiple, because I swear to God, having to have conversations with myself where it's like, well, this is something you have to do. Well, I don't know about that. And I'm like, I feel like a crazy person. I've had to switch gears 17 times today because I feel like they're always like, well, we'll go ask this other. And I'm like, why do you keep turning every NPC into a recurring NPC? I never want to do that voice again. Please stop.
Because you're too good, y'all. Okay, our next question is, when you're getting a session ready, what do your notes and plans look like? And how do you decide what to have on hand and how much stays just in your mind ready to be swift? And also, this is one question. When you're doing those notes, how long on average do you guys prepare for one? And what are your notes like for those? Because I would like to just spell it like, this is your commitment if you're going to DM every week, you guys.
The amount of prep I do, I think, varies from session to session. I feel like because I at this point, I feel like I have a pretty good gauge on most of the people I play with, where I can tell where I'm like, so they're going to go to this town. It should take them 5 minutes to get this information, but they're going to hang out there for 45 minutes. Like I kind of know, like, so I start to gauge the players. The first few sessions I do a lot of prep for. After that, I have a better idea of like what they'll be interested, how long things are going to take. Sometimes you still run into those issues where I'm like, okay, it took them 20 minutes to open a door because they checked it for traps for 13 minutes and all of that. But, you learn to like account for that. And I would say that like the biggest notes I give myself are what the players were excited about last session and who I feel like didn't get a chance to do their thing. Because you'll have someone that's like, I'm a crypto linguist, and it's like, oh, that's never going to come up in this campaign. Make it come up. If somebody like really loves like, oh, I'm a historian for Elven, you know, and then it never comes into play because it's a combat heavy campaign, I try to make some notes and incorporate it somewhere in. So, you know, if one of my players is a big cook, we're having a bake sale. I don't know how I'm going to make it work, but the necromancer of this village desires cupcakes. So I try to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting because yeah, you're right. Like I'm the kind of player who I love to have like a weird skill. Like I could talk to chickens or whatever. And if you don't monopolize on my chicken talking, I'm gonna be a little bit pissed off. Like
I conjure a chicken and then I talk to it.
And how many hours do you think you prep for? I mean, obviously as you get used to it, you get more and to know yourself as a DM. Some people might need to over prepare. It's kind of like as a writer. Are you a fast writer? Are you a slow writer? How many hours do you think you prepare, Jasmine?
It probably takes me about, oh gosh, like half an hour for 90 minutes of content or campaign, roughly. It's like a 1-to-3 ratio, kind of.
Interesting.
What I work with. Yeah.
Amy, what about you? How long do you think?
Oh, a lot. I mean, it depends. If it's D&D and we're already in the game, it's shorter. But normally, like if we're starting at the start of a campaign, if I know, I've always played it in chunks, like 4 or 6 episodes or 8 episodes, that kind of thing. The beginning part of it can take a lot of hours. I don't really know how many, but minimum probably 10 or 12. And then once we're in week to week, it's probably 4 per episode. But really, I mean, most of that is 3 things. One, I like to change the location and the environment for every session, just so we're not in the dungeon forever, because I think there's a lot of color that can happen from environment. So then that's just brainstorming, well, what else is in this environment and what monsters and what NPCs. And then 2, anything that was improvised by the characters, how do I make that a real thing? Like they said it as a one-off, but oops, it's real. And then the third thing that, oh God, I can't remember what I was going to say, but yeah, twists and turns. I will say I'm prepping. I start DMing for a show tomorrow. That's a whole new system, and that took longer than anything, just because it's a new system. So learning the rules, I read about 400 plus pages of textbook pages, then making notes, asking. I know, making notes, asking questions, developing like what characters' backstories and how they fit into the campaign. Yeah. And it's probably like 2 weeks where it's like 2 to 3 hours a day with maybe the weekends off, but it's a lot.
That's a lot, but
it can be, but
it's like you're learning a new skill set, right? Like that's work. It's like learning a programming language or whatever. Like, okay, now I know this and now I'm well-versed in these other things, right?
Yes, but if it's D&D, like, and if it is a module, which I don't really like playing with modules, but if it is, I could do it with almost no prep.
Yeah. Well, because the module basically tells you, you're just basically reading a story, which is fine too. Yep. Like that's probably the easiest way to get into it, right?
Absolutely.
Sateen, how what do you leave for notes and what do you leave for in your mind, and how long do you think?
So I write it because I'm used to writing comic book scripts and TV scripts. So every episode or every session is an episode. So all of mine, so I take like a couple hours, probably 2 to 4 hours for the overall story. And it's just to plot beats and arcs and lay things out. But then if you look at my campaign page that I have as like a document, it's bullet points and plot beats according to time. So I dungeon master almost primarily on Patreon. So it's like, I know that I can get them to commit for about 6 months, and it's 3 hours a session once a month. So I make it they want a story. So they're with me for the story, and I let them play within the story, and they can kind of have a bunch of different endings, but as long as I hit those beats according to time, like literal time, like 7 o'clock, 7:15, we're going to do this. 7:30, this happens in the world wherever they are. So they're always reacting to that. And I find that it gets them to kind of follow my thread and super not realize I'm railroading them.
But that's really interesting. That's kind of like how you write, or at least my experience of how you write a comic book. You know, like every page, you're like page 1, page 2. Like that's how I was taught to sort of outline a comic book. Like this is what happens on these pages, and you just do 1 through 22, and you're like, okay, great, I have room for this, and then you adjust at will, right? And that's interesting to do time based because you're right. You could spend 20 minutes opening a door, which we often do when we do Gilded D&D, right? And so you're being able to be like, okay, this is the agenda. You're really focusing almost like a tour guide, getting you through this journey in a timely manner. That seems to be quite a skill that you would have to juggle, though.
Yeah, well, it creates player agency. And then by the second session, you don't have to work as much because they're used to a pace that you're almost like you've trained them. I say training a lot, but you do. You train your players to move with you.
Yeah, so. That's fascinating. Abria, what kind of prep do you do, and how long does it take?
I remember. I remember the third one. It was just a list of names and places that I can't think of in the moment.
Oh yes, because when you're a player and you don't write things down, like all the rest of the guild, like I'm the only person who writes things. I was like, guys, it's the elf, the woman who was in the hut. Guys, I have a list of here. Okay, I'm just bragging about myself now. Abria.
Respect.
Abria, how much prep do you do? And because I just want people to understand that I guess it is some time commitment, but it is doable. And I think that's what people need to wrap their head around, especially women who are like reluctant to dive in, like it is a time commitment, but it's doable. So how do you kind of approach it?
I think I'm probably like on the ratio, probably half the time of the session length I will spend in prep, but I feel like I've never actually like really prepped for more than an hour like in a burst in advance of a session. That other half hour to an hour is like the one weird tangent. Like at some point, like an idea like popped up and I'm just gonna like follow that thread and be like, okay, I really care about like a player had a throwaway line about like a breed of bird that looks like a pink parrot that steals nipples. So now we're going to talk about like, I'm going to have way too much information about the nip nope now. So if it ever comes up again, like I have these like weird little like box texts in my, like I keep it all in a big Google Doc. I have box texts in my Google Doc that are just like, in the event that anyone wants to know more about like the nip nope and they find like an ornithologist that specializes in this, I've thought too much about this one thing. So I always end up with like a big list of like the things I've thought too much about that like will probably never come up, but they make me laugh really hard. So I will follow my brain on that. Like once I get through like the broad strokes, because once again, like, yeah, with a table, especially with a lot of like stream game tables where you're playing with improvers and performers in general, that you're like, we all kind of know like what needs to happen across an arc to tell a good story. So I'm not worried about us like getting where we need to get. I can do the like in the first act of a 3-hour like session, I will let you know what the theme or the goal is. And like, I can trust my table that like, they're also going to work hard to get there by the end, and we'll just go about it however they want. And I will just keep building the world out around them. But because that is so much easier, I think I enjoy spending more time like coming up with like important little like hyper fixated things that like are true about the world that help me build out everything else around it, because I'm a huge fan of the like, if this thing is true, what are the other things that are true about like Candlekeep? And like, if this is a place where a library is like the most important part and aspect of the city, like what is true about the culture around it? Has that like filter out into food? So most of my prep comes into like, it centers on like, what's that one central theme or idea? And if I know that big if then statement, like I'm more comfortable improvising anything else in the space as it comes up based on like what the table cares about. So
that's amazing. Yeah. And also what I love about all of you describing that process, because I really thought it was important to get each of your perspective, is that everybody is different. And just like any other art form, you don't practice one way, you don't write one way. You know, there are certain rules that you could follow, but if those rules feel confining or taking the fun out of it, you can approach anything creative in any way, and you really just have to get to know yourself and how you find the joy and what you want to do. We have room I
want to say the other thing, if you're doing a Twitch thing or something that's treated like television, where it is about, you know, you need to get these players to do 6 episodes and end here and do that. I had to do that for, it was something where it was based on someone being sick. This is pre-COVID, but they were either going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks, and I had to basically there was no way around it. I had to railroad the characters and the players. And so they didn't mind that I was like, by the end of this episode, this is where we need to be. I won't give you any spoilers on how it's going to get there, but for me to be able to do what I need to do, like basically you need to realize you're not alone. Like the burden of storytelling isn't just on the dungeon master. And if you do need something from your players, feel free to ask for it. I think
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Yep.
Guys, we're out of time. We had some really great questions, but I don't want to take any more time because I keep going over. And we have a lot of comments in the chat about how to hire you guys to DM. So I don't know if you guys are open to any of that, but can you just each of you go down and where can people find your work? Where can they watch you do your art form? If you have a place to contact them for any of those things, just let them know, because you are all brilliant, amazing women. I'm so this has been so confidence building and a boost for me, and I hope has provided some access to being a DM to other people in the chat who might have been shy, because like you said, you're always missing a DM. Why not just step up to the plate, overcome that fear and do it? So Jasmine, can you start us off? Where can people find you? What show would they love? Would you suggest they start watching you as a DM? Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. Hi, hello. I'm Jasmine, that bronze girl Bular. You can find me on Twitch. I stream every single day, twitch.tv/that bronze girl, on Twitter at the same handle. I have a lot of different projects. That's the easiest way to keep track of all of them, because I have a hard time keeping track of all of them. But if you were inspired by our gushing over Vampire the Masquerade, one of my projects you can see is Starter Kit. I GM'd the Vampire the Masquerade segment for that. You can find it on, I think, Amazon Prime Video, as well as I think other places.
Nice.
That's not helpful at all.
It's okay. It's okay. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Sateen, where can people find you and contact you?
At Sateen Phoenix and all the things. So I am for hire, actually. On my patreon.com/Sateen Phoenix, I can teach you how to make a story, to dungeon master. I do a lot of coaching on it. I've got about 5 or 7 games a month on there. But also, you can go to GM Tips, and I think the one with Amy is one of my all-time favorites. That was really cool. We talk about story structure. And then if you really want to watch people create stories, I have a show on Gilding Lights YouTube called The Storyteller's Guide, where you get to watch people make it, and so fast. It's really awesome. So at Sateen Phoenix on everything, sateenphoenix.net, just say hi.
Yeah, amazing. Abria, where can people find you and see your work? And I know you're in 15 campaigns right now as a player.
I will not list them. It's too long. But hi, I'm Abria Iyengar. You can catch me on social media at Quiddy, Q-U-I-D-D-I-E, and that's the easiest way to keep track of everything. But I do want to shout out that this Wednesday is the beginning of a new game that I'm running in Masks, which is powered by the Apocalypse system. It's called The Unleashed, and it's going to be, on Strawberry 17's channel at 6:30 p.m.
That looks so good. Yeah.
Oh man, we've been working on this since April, so I'm very, very excited.
Amazing. Amazing. And follow her over there. And Amy, not last but never least, where can people find you, and what is this new show you're talking about?
Yes,
Everybody wants to know.
It's at Vorpal Sword on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to hire me, how is this a job? You can DM me. That's crazy, but you can, I guess. And then the show is actually I'm GMing, or the keeper, for Asunder, which is a new RPG, which is it's like Dungeons and Dragons, but in the world there's no metal and there's no deities, so everything is living, and everybody has bonded with either an animal or a plant, and everyone's it's almost like Annihilation, if you've seen that movie or read that book, where it's is that a human, or is it a plant, or is it a mixture of everything? And Sateen is one of the players.
What? So, great. So that sounds amazing. Where can people see it? Where can people see it?
It's called Good Time Society. So it's twitch.tv/Good Time Society. And we'll be running in conjunction with this RPG's Kickstarter launch. So that
amazing.
That won't launch, I think, until November, but we're going to be playing the game during and after the Kickstarter launch.
Amazing. It sounds fun. I will definitely check it out. I love other systems. By the way, the other system that I was talking about besides Good Society, that I would kill to play, is Blue Rose. Okay. It is a romance fantasy world. Okay. So I don't know where you get some elf ass, but I want it. So
Please
Anyway.
invite me to your elf dating sim. I want to go to there.
Elf dating sim, exactly. I want to
Could
pick
be
it
like
all.
the greatest anime never made.
It should be
No,
made.
it exists. Or on High
It
School
it does
Host.
exist. Anyway.
Yeah. That's
Thank you so much for being here, ladies. Guys, we're taking a week off next week from this, and we will start Women Are again the week after next, ending and November 23rd. Our next episode will be November 2nd, and it will be board game designers. And we have incredible board game designers, including the creative wingspan of Quiplash, not Quiplash, but Quirkle, and a couple of other amazing women. So definitely tune in November 2nd. And thank you again, DM ladies. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.